Right. Um, so my name is Henrique. I have been making games for a good part of 25 years now, since the ZX Spectrum, Amiga, went through all that. But I also was lucky enough to be part of some big companies that changed the game landscape throughout the years, such as Jagex with RuneScape, and then later Playfish with social games that Zynga copied and were far more successful than us with them. But anyway, what I'm here about to talk today is about my experience with Bossa. Bossa Studios is a company I founded with two co-founders to try to make games that would change the way people played social games at the time, right? And the talk I have for you guys is how we are very lucky to be here today, why we didn't actually crash and burn as many other studios that started at the same time that we didn't have the same kind of luck. So why is failing bad? Why is it wrong to fail? We grew up being told that failing is wrong, that is for the weak. We don't like failing at all. In school, if you fail a test, you get marked down for doing that. Your parents get pretty angry with it. You feel ostracized by your peers unless you hang around on the back of the class like I did. And anyway, if I fail today to do a decent presentation here, I will feel ashamed. We are all born and bred to be successful. And yet, all around us, the universe doesn't work like that. The universe fails a lot in order to achieve success. It's only our artificial constructs of society and culture that impose on us that we have to be successful at any cost, right? Failure is the natural state of the universe in its search for success. As far as we can tell, Earth is the only body in the solar system that has life and is hosting slush. Maybe Mars has, or the oceans or Europa, who knows. But the point is, nature fails a lot, right? Take, for instance, natural selection. Natural selection evolves through mutation far more bad traits than the ones that actually succeed and get passed along. And yet, we are here as a product of natural selection, very happy having a conversation about games. Scientific method is the same. The tests that people devise to prove or disprove a theory, more often than not, they fail. And then we move on from that. But even our cognition processes that we go through infancy, like when we take our first steps and we stumble while we learn how to walk, or when we stutter when we learn how to speak, or as teenagers, we all are into pop music until we decide that that's rubbish and we should listen to something better. This is all part of the process. We evolve to making mistakes. So, of course, trial and error is not the only way forward. We don't build 100 probes to launch towards Mars, hoping that one of them will land, and we will take that design and replicate it afterwards, right? In systems where most variables and parameters are known, they are predictable, we can eliminate risk by prediction and exercise to achieve success rates close to 100%. We all enter in a plane expecting that we will land on the next airport. And this is true for most sciences like engineering, like physics and chemistry. But it's not true for all science. Look at medicine, for instance, right? Because the variables in medicine are so complex, they depend on the individual. People have different metabolism, they have different bodies, they react different, even to the packaging of the medicine they are taking is not so straightforward. Someone cannot sit down and design a drug that will cure a disease, expecting that will actually happen. It doesn't work like that. Drugs go through a lot of placebo controls, they get compared to peer drugs, they get into field tests until eventually a drug emerges and cures a disease. And yet, the pharmaceutical industry deals with that. They save lots of lives, they make a lot of money. How do they deal with that, right? And this is the problem with games. Maybe it's because games were born inside universities and physics labs with the big computers machines that made space war, or maybe it's because most of us who start a company, we have a heavy technical background. Most of us are programmers or we are scientists. Most of us people who come from a technical approach. But whatever the reason, most developers I know, they seem to think that the creation of a game is a very predictable science. that they can start and finish a game with everything in that process under their control. And they hire people, they go through all the processes to try to rein in that process and exert control over that. It's very common to start a studio around one game idea, right? People say, oh, this game is great, I think it's going to be very successful, it's going to be very unique, and we're going to start a studio and we're going to make it into a success. And yet, if that game doesn't succeed, the company crashes and burns and you don't hear about the company anymore. Some smart people, though, understand this, and what they do is that they get enough funding that they can make mistakes a few times before they get it right. The problem with that approach is that when you get it right, most people believe that you know why you got it right. And then you try to replicate that over and over again. And this leads to companies which are one-hit wonder. Companies that you know they make a big game, very successful, but they never manage to match that success ever again. There is a very different way to approach this problem, right? A few companies that I know of understood that success emerges out of a chaotic system. It's a system that is overly complex. The best way to tackle it is to fail a lot of the time so you can find the small victories that will lead to success. These companies base their entire structure and their entire culture around failing a lot, very, very fast, very cheaply, so they can find the games that are very successful, that take them through the stratosphere. And you know these companies. They are the most successful companies in the world. King, for instance. King has some 9 games on iOS and Android. That's probably how many games they have on the store. But what few people know is that King has a web portal where they produce games and they commission third parties to produce games, and they do hundreds of games every year that they put online on that portal. And only the best ones of them become Candy Crush Saga or Papa Pear Saga, all the things that you come to know, but they are successful. Looking at the external, they only create successes. Everything they launch on iOS is successful. But if you look how it really works, they create more than 100 games for each one that they succeed. The other one is Supercell. I have no idea how many games they produce every year, but they kill a lot of the games before we ever heard of them, right? They make games and they kill games all the time, silently, without anyone knowing. And that's so embedded into their culture that you heard earlier David Gardner mentioning that they pop up champagne when they kill a game, and they only drink beer when they get a success. But you get the gist here. Failure for them is right. Now, I did not create Bossa thinking like this. I created Bossa to succeed. To make games I believed will make great success, big games that will make us a lot of money and majorly a lot of players happy to play the games, right? And to be fair, we were lucky. Our very first game won a BAFTA for Best Online Game at the time. And a BAFTA, if you don't know, is like the Oscar for games in the UK. We were very chuffed to that, but that game was never a commercial success. And neither was the second game we did, and neither was the third game we did. So here we were with 3 games we made, cost a lot of money, employed a lot of people, and none of them made money for us. We were very close to running into the ground, to dying like many other studios before us did, until we decided to do things slightly different. Bossa today is a very, very different place from that one that I started 4 years ago. We are a studio that produces around 30 playable games for each one that we actually release to the public. So our failure rate is of 97%. And it's fine. It's fine because we control that rate of failure. The trick is that we fail very fast, all the time, very cheaply, and that doesn't affect us at all. We compensate by the success we have with all the failures that we buried down on our backyard. When a game enters full production, out of this system that we fail a lot, we are pretty certain that that game is going to be a commercial success, and because of that, it brings with us a lot of beneficial side effects, like the teams ramp up behind the game because they know it's going to be a success. They have proven it. They know it's better than the other 29 that they killed. For some reason, everybody's happier working in that environment, and the game actually is developed faster because people are vested in that game. What's more, ever since we started this process, every single game we launched, all 5 of them, have reached #1 in the charts, right? Even last weekend, we did a smartwatch experiment that we never expected to sell anything, came out of this process, and we were #1 above Minecraft in the UK. So This is something that we seem to work. And it also brings a side effect, which is we are now able to create games that no one else thought would be possible to make. For instance, Surgeon Simulator was one of our biggest success. If I were sitting down in a pitching process and a developer came to me and said, I'm going to make a game which is about surgery. You control one arm with each key for each finger and the mouse to mess around with the arm. And you're going to do the heart transplant in the back of a speeding ambulance, hitting potholes with the hearts jumping and everybody getting crazy. That will never be greenlit. Nobody in their sane mind would approve that project to go ahead. Because we will not predict that it will be successful, because nobody believed it will be successful. But because we have a system that fails a lot and the good games emerge, when they emerge, we don't doubt them. Doesn't matter how crazy and weird they are, we look at them and say, this emerged, it will succeed. So there is a couple of ways to do this. King does its own way, develops a lot of games through a lot of systems and pick up the good ones. Supercell embraces in a culture. We do it a different way that I wanted to share with you because it's very useful for startups. It's very cheap and very easy to do. We do it through game jams. Every month, every single month, we stop for 2.5 days. The first half day, we throw ideas up in the air around the theme. Let's say games that we love to play, or childhood dreams, or touch games. We create around 24 ideas around that theme, and we go home. The next 2 days, we come back to the studio, and we separate into teams, which pick one of those ideas, and they develop a game in 2 days, with only 2 rules. The first rule is that you cannot work by yourself. You have to pick an idea that is good enough so someone else will do it with you. If it's so rubbish, the idea that you picked up, you better work on somebody else's idea. And you have to finish with something which is playable. So in the Monday afterwards, we can all sit down and play those games to find out which ones are the ones that we like. Of course, this doesn't happen very often, but sometimes one of these game jams results in a game that we all stop and say, bloody hell, this is fantastic. This is really good. And that's the last step, that's the next to last step of the process. The last step is that if we believe that one of the games that came out of the game jam is really successful, we try to somehow validate that game. And we do this from many different ways. For instance, with I Am Bread, where you are a slice of bread that has to become toast. It's a very silly game, but very successful. We made a video and put on YouTube expecting to get 250,000 views of that video in a week. If we didn't get that, we would say, okay, we were wrong, people don't like the game, let's not do it. We got 1.5 million. So when we do that, everybody knows that they're working on something great, and the success rate expected of that product is very high, right? So in a nutshell, success in the game industry can only be certain when you're working on something that you have done before, such as GTA in a sequence, or FIFA, which we have done every year, or something like that. This is why the sequel market is so strong and so strong as an IP, interesting to VCs. But if you are out to create something new, which is what you heard from everybody sitting here today holding the money, something that will change, is unpredictable. You're dealing with a chaotic system that you cannot control all the variables. Like players change, platforms change, culture change, the markets change. It takes a few months for you to create a game, and during that time, everything can change. So as nature teaches us, the best way to dealing with a chaotic system such as the gamer and the game market is through trial and error, is through natural selection, right? So the way that we succeeded, the way that we made it, was to embrace that. We embraced failure to find our own successes. And ever since, we have become, from a company that was about to fail, a company that would never see the light of day, to a company that has been producing games which are successful one after the other, very cheaply and very happily so. Thank you. Have time for questions? Yeah? I have time for questions. Anyone? Enough? I cannot move, apparently. That's fine, it's fine. I can do it without moving. Anyone? Questions? Yes? Mm. When we right, no, we never did 2 game jams the same way. We always change them. We always introduce a new element, take out another element, in the hope that we will make them better all the time, right? That's one of the things that we always do. The second thing is that in that process, we invite even external studios to join us sometimes. But when we find something special, which is your question, how do you can tell that something is good? It emerges immediately. Every time all the studio, they stop and see that is special. And it happens very rarely. As I said, we are 30 people, so we produce 5 to 6 games every game jam. So it takes us between 5 and 6 jams to find one good game. But when it happens, it's immediate. Everybody understands, everybody sees, there's no argument. I'm surprised that that's the way it is. But even so that is like that, we try to publicly validate that as well. We just don't pick the game and go with it. Like Surgeon Simulator, we put it online first time with a web browser game and a video, and everybody went crazy about it. And so we did with Iron Bread. And so we are doing now with Worlds of Drift, which is an MMO, very risky project. But the first thing we did was to put a video out there and ask people, would you like us to make this game? Should we stop? Is this a stupid idea? And even on YouTube comments, we got very positive ones. Our community manager cried that day when they saw positive and adult comments on YouTube. So it works. It's finding a way to validate your ideas. Don't rely only on your team, because you might have vested interest, especially if your team is too small, right? Yes?
So I'm just wondering, how many times you do this game jams? Are there all the employees of the company doing video on hold?
Yeah, we do every month. Everyone has to participate. It is part of it. It costs us 15% of our operational costs, right? 15% of our time and costs goes into these game jams to rule out 97% of our potential of failure. That sounds like a good balance.
But how long do you usually spend in production?
After the jam or during the jam? During the jam is 2 days. After the jam, it varies from game to game, right? Before we validate them, some games come out of the jam ready to validate, like Surgeon. Iron Bread, we put another 2 weeks into development before we validated it, but it's never more than a month where we validate. We're validating less than a month of production. After that, depending on the game, could take anywhere between 3 months to 2 years. Depends on the type of the game. Surgeon took 3 months for launch, Iron Bread took 4, Worlds of Drift is being developed for 6 months, and then probably another 4 ahead of it. It's very fast, yeah. The Spywatch game that we launched last Friday, along with the with the watch from Apple, took us a month and a half. So that's what I said, that when people are behind the idea, they created the idea, right? Came from them. They are so vested and so fast. They outperform any team of the same size. We are just 30 people, 34 people at the studio. The amount of games we release every year, you will struggle to find a studio with 100 people doing the same thing. Yes?
You said that when a good idea is found, everyone is immediately behind it, something special happens. But is there ever any dissent? Some people saying that, no, I don't like this. Very cold.
No, eventually it might happen. We didn't run into this yet. What we did have is some people who had ideas, developed a game, and for some reason they believed that game was as good as deserving to be developed, while everybody else did not. What happened there is that game exists now, and if people don't play it inside the studio, you cannot justify that it should be done. And the fact remains that not even those guys who made that game kept playing it. So it's a very easy argument to have. Say, you're not playing the game. Why you want to expect other people to do so? Cool. Thank you.